Let's have a look at some Thunderbirds pod vehicles. Now, I would be here for a year and a day if I tried to cover every single pod vehicle going, but if you see my recent Tracy Island video, you'll know that I picked up a number of Tracy Islands in order to do it, but off the back of that I also got additional vehicles that were often being sold with the Tracy Islands. So I've shown you this one before, but obviously I didn't get this because it's a sealed pack. That's relatively unusual. But you can see that this action adventure set features two pod vehicles at least, the Mole and the Firefly. Scott and Firefly, Virgil and the Mole, and you can see them here in their tiny, tiny thumbnail scale sort of little figures. I mean, how Carlton expected any of these to survive, I don't know, but survive they have. And this is the hood in his submarine, so that's a bad guy, not a pod vehicle obviously for obvious reasons, but pod vehicle scale for these purposes. And the nice thing about these vehicles is A, they're quite chunky, so they're harder to miss, but also they do fit the minifigures inside them, which is a nice touch. As you can see the various details here. I mean, they were pushing it really hard in '99. This is from the Soundtech era, although these little machines don't have sounds. They have some playability, but no sounds. So you can see it was a Vivid Imaginations released these toys, and Carlton were the ones who were doing the licensing at this point because they owned the rights. The Stingray I've also shown you on another video, but there you have the Mole, and they're mentioning Desperate Intruder, City of Fire, Pit of Peril, and those are sort of collector cards which apparently you're supposed to sort of cut out and obviously form a sort of collection of. So it's quite cleverly done because they're doing a little bit of sort of value add there with the packaging. But the plus side, you see, of me having got these Tracy Islands is that I can now show you these little pod vehicles outside of their packaging. So as you can see here, this is the Mole, this is the hood's little vehicle, and he fits quite happily in there. And all it says on the underside is just if I can actually see it, Carlton. Yeah. So all it says is Carlton. So you don't get any more information than that. Carlton, made in China. That's your lot. So it's not overly helpful if you're trying to identify them. But I'm reasonably confident that only Carlton were putting these out, and I don't think anyone else, to my knowledge, has actually done a little hood submarine. But there it is. More familiar will probably be this one, which is the Firefly. I think we see this in one of the if not the very first Thunderbirds episode, actually, doing a bit of sort of firefighting and sort of demolition and clearance work. So it fires a little sort of explosive bolt out the front of its bulldozer ram there, but it can also lift that up out of the way. You've got a little bit of more detail in the front. Little wheels, little caterpillar tracks, and again, little mention of Carlton on the bottom there. But again, its cockpit lifts up, if I can figure out where I need to pull from without marmalising the whole thing. There we go. So it's got a quite nice little sort of reclining couch for the appropriate person, which I'm not sure that I don't actually have the fireproof version of anyone here, but again, you can see little Thunderbirds figures that can just sort of pop in and close up again. So at least you can have a little bit of sort of enhanced playability off the back of that for whatever it's worth. But they're quite nice, detailed little models for what they are. And I say it's just nice that I can now sort of link them up to their packaging, but show you them out of the packaging. This one in particular is quite impressive. The mold, because the mold is a classic Thunderbirds vehicle. So its drill bit rotates, which is nice, but it also does this. So the mole, as it would do in the series, actually comes off its launch base, which is a nice touch. And then it would go off drilling, and it would just leave this base behind as its sort of point of retrieval. I don't think it actually did it tilt as well. Don't think it does. That might be asking a bit much, but there are versions of it that do that, I believe. In fact, if I put this back on it, does it do it? Ah, yes, it does. It does. That's right. I wasn't imagining it. So you can tilt it down first, and then it can slide off and go digging. So as playability features goes, that's really nice. That's a very, very playable little mole, and it's probably the only way in which you would really get a mole of this size to actually play with, because you did get another mole from Carlton, which is this one. But this one is very much smaller, as you can probably tell from the scale of my fingers to it. And this just came in the Thunderbird 2 pod with Thunderbird 4. And of course, technically speaking, Thunderbird 4 itself is a pod vehicle. And again, Carlton did release a large Thunderbird 4 with the large Thunderbird 2, which could take a figure. But Thunderbird 4, technically speaking, is a pod vehicle because it is launched from a pod. And I'll just show you the sort of little hatch for the mole here. I can figure out that's the way to do it. So that one flips forward and open, and again you've just got a little sort of seat in there for the minifigure. So it's a nice piece for the playability, and I like the fact that you could get all three in one place. Well, I had to laugh. I was I was just packing up my stuff for the night, and I was putting some things back in my display cabinets when I unearthed this. And I did promise myself when I was putting this video together that I wasn't going to try and cover every single pod vehicle going. But given that these guys were just sat there and I hadn't looked at them, I thought I'd better do a little bit of extra filming. So here I have discovered a group of Matchbox pod vehicles on a card, which is lovely. But I had completely forgotten that I had these. I probably got these, and I probably have looked at them on film before, because I was trying to figure out where the KFC mole had come from, and I was kind of ruling moles out. So I'd gotten these to see if this mole was the one that I already had an example of, which of course it wasn't, as it turned out. But it is another mole. And here we have another Firefly, and this is the recovery vehicle. And in fact, I think when I was looking at my my Thunderbirds ephemera for another video, there was a tiny little version of this as a pod vehicle in that collection as well, and that's what that one is. It's the recovery vehicle. I like these Matchbox cards because they're very, very vivid, ironically. Sorry. But I also thought that, for the purposes of this video, it would be good to balance out the Carlton approach to pod vehicles with the Matchbox one. Although, interestingly, of course, I've shown you before, and again, this is one I won't do now, but Carlton did do a couple of other little pod vehicles, which in fact I think were, these two. They were the Firefly and recovery vehicle, but smaller at their Thunderbird 4 and mole sort of scale for a special anniversary set that they did. But, these ones, I guess, were probably designed to go inside maybe the larger Matchbox Thunderbird 2. They might fit in the normal size Matchbox Thunderbird 2. I'm just trying to mentally picture its Thunderbird 4. Actually, no, they probably wouldn't. But maybe they'd go in the larger pod for the larger Matchbox Thunderbird 2. And as you can see from the back here, they've all got a bit of functionality to them. So they sort of do go into a little bit of detail about the descriptions about what each vehicle is, and they've all got a little bit of functionality in terms of moving elements. And this one's actually got little sort of missile launchers as well there, which is cool. So, there's not much more to say about them than what's said there is. You can always pause it and have a look if you want to have a read of that. They use a technique of artificial gravity generation, do they? The recovery vehicle suckers. Okay, interesting. Comes complete with the rolling wheels and twin firing suction pads, just like the real thing. Okay. Now, interestingly, 1993. So they're slightly after the original 1992 range of Matchbox vehicles. So I guess they must have been trying to keep the momentum going with these. And maybe with things like sort of, the pullback vehicles and so on that you could get as well. There were all sort of additions to the sort of the main cast list, if you like, of sort of, the bigger vehicles. But it's quite cool that I've got those though, because it just sort of rounds out the range of pod vehicles that I've got from various different eras. And obviously they all went for slightly different variations of these. It's got, they threw the hood submarine in in the Carlton range, but they tend to stick to the Firefly and the Molds as the more sort of common ones. But you do also see the recovery vehicle represented as well, but in a smaller size. So, I mean, as strange as it might seem, I've probably nearly got an entire range of, sort of Carlton and Matchbox and so on vehicles at this point. So, I won't go into detail now about what I'm thinking about, but I am thinking about something. So, after this little interlude, I will leave the video as it was, as I'd even uploaded it, but I'm going to have to take it down and re-upload it with this segment in it. So I'm going to crack on with that for now. Now, I did say that it would take me a year and a day if I tried to cover every single pod vehicle, but I was tempted by something on eBay. And this intrigued me because, and I haven't even looked at this very closely myself, to be perfectly honest, and I'm actually going to put my glasses on so I can actually make out some more of the detail, because, as you can see, this is a strange mashup. This is both Hot Wheels and CWUE and Bandai and Carlton. So I'm guessing this is a 1999 sort of era release. I'm just having a look. Oh no, actually Bandai 2003, interestingly. Now, as you can see, this is a Japanese release. And the Japanese do love Thunderbirds, as I understand it. So you do see a lot of Thunderbirds merchandise coming out of Japan, which is really primarily aimed at the Japanese market, which this seems to be. And what you've got in this box, which I'm not going to fully open because I'm not quite sure how valuable this actually is, but you've got all of these individual pod-type vehicles and figures, and they're in a sort of, a really nice Velcro-y display case like this. And I'd never seen this before. And again, all Japanese, so I've got no idea what the descriptions are. It just says specification of Thunderbird rescue vehicles on it. But there's a whole range of them here, of which these are only perhaps half, if that. And there's a little Thunderbird 4 there in the front of them as well. But I like this one because it had a really nice mole. And in fact, like the Carlton mole, it's got the sort of the cross beam on it, if you like. I don't know what the official description of that would be. Oh, this is a Chara Wheels Ultimate Edition, which I imagine... Chara Wheels Ultimate Edition. Yeah, that would make sense with it. CWUE. So as you can see, this is completely sealed, and I'm not proposing to unseal it, to be perfectly honest. But you've got International Rescue in there. So that's whatever that is, some sort of height rescue sort of device. That is... I don't know what his name is. I don't want to get it wrong. It's not Virgil. It's not Scott. Does that make it Alan or Gordon? Obviously, a rather nice version of the mole there, with a sort of blue, a blue sort of launch base there, and then you've got that Brains' robot there. I can't remember what his name was. It's probably something very obvious, but I can't remember. I think he was in this episode where they were trying to set off thrusters on a spaceship to turn its course, and they were trying to beam using this piece of equipment, which was taken in a pod to a mountain. So I do remember it. But I couldn't swear as to what its official sort of name is. But really interesting scale to them, because again, bigger than a typical Thunderbird 2 pod vehicle. If they compare it with the Carlton mole, it's obviously much bigger than the Carlton mole, and yet not as big as the sort of the mini figure Carlton mole. Although again, that's got a different role in life, I suppose, if you see what I mean, because of its nature. But I just love it as a mole on its transportation unit. It's just a really, really nice detailed model of it, which I would expect from Bandai, because this is what they do. So I'm just looking here to see if it actually mentions in English on the back at all. It's very clever as well, because you've got a window both ways. So even if you look at the back of the box, you can still see into the box, which is a nice touch. I can't see any mention there of what the actual package contents are. I'm sure I could find out. So linking to Thunderbirds Online and tbjapan.com. And obviously, a very wide range of options there. So it looks like they've got the elevator cars in there as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a really, really interesting set. And again, this is not one that I know a great deal about, other than the fact that it looked cool and I randomly grabbed it. So it's kind of, if you've got any more sort of backstory on this than I have, then please do let me know, because I just thought that the combination of Hot Wheels and Bandai fascinated me as a concept, because what a terrific sort of team up that is. That was the top edge. That's the bottom edge. And it would be the sort of thing that I'd be loath to get out. Now that's interesting. I wonder if this is the third box of them, because there is a 3 there. So I wonder if this is the third selection. There's also a 3 on the end there, which is a sort of Roman 3. So that could be what it is. So it's interesting. So the copyright is actually 1964, 1999, and 2003. How very interesting. Yeah, interesting. So it's kind of interesting what you can try and figure out and derive from the various sort of text on the actual sort of outer packaging. So yeah, but just as I say, just always fascinates me when I see a sort of one of the Japanese versions, because they are very, very prettily done. And I know that Bandai also did some of the pullback Thunderbird ones. In fact, I did have one floating around a minute ago. I don't anymore, but they did the pullback Thunderbird 2s and 4s at this sort of time as well. So they were kind of involved in the British market, but perhaps not quite as obviously as this one. And not that this was for the British market, of course, clearly, because it's not, because it's all in Japanese. So yeah, really, really interesting set, I think. And I'd say, if anyone knows more about it than I do, which wouldn't be difficult, then please do inform me further. So the next really big one of these I want to tackle is Thunderbird 3, but I suspect I'm going to run out of time right now. So it might be that I come back to Thunderbird 3 in the new year. You might have noticed that I did have a Thunderbird 3 video up, but I've actually taken it down because I've now got a few more to show you. So I'm going to replace my original one with this one once I come to do it. So do like and subscribe as ever if you've enjoyed this one, and cheers for now.